Michigan. I used to, not anymore. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow.
I'm just saying, if I were a good NFL head coach, if I were a hot offensive coordinator, and that coaching cycle's going to come around, and they're like, hey, do you want the Giants job? Or do you want the Michigan job? I think the Michigan job is much better.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
You ain't buying no tickets.
Who isn't?
You're not going
I'm
to
saying
these
I'm a
games.
fan. Of course I'm not. There's a fan. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, but if you were a fan, I thought you were a fan of the Hurricanes. You're not anymore.
They told me. I told them to donate my tickets.
Yeah, so I get it. But the fans travel. They have money, believe it or not. It's amazing. They
Look,
well, somebody's got money.
In this economy,
but they have money. I don't know. See what Kelsey says about the economy.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Look, the trend continues to go to Blake Corum. He's still available. I can't believe he's still available. So if you have Kyron Williams, you got to have Blake Corum on your roster. And if you don't have Kyron Williams, I think you still want Blake Corum on your roster. You got to have these insurance policies on your roster at the very least. Even in a shallow league, if Blake Corum's floating out there, don't let him float out there. The last thing you want to have happen is for him to end up on some other team and then taking you the next couple weeks to win a championship.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid.
They went all in with the Sauce Gardner trade, right? All in. Give you a couple of number one picks here. Then Daniel Jones breaks the leg. And then he tears the Achilles. All right? You're signing Phillip Rivers. Are you kidding me? I mean, by the way, you know what hasn't been talked about enough? Sam Ellinger decided he didn't want to come play for the Colts. Why? You would have been. I know Denver activated him to the roster anyway, but he would have been maybe a starting quarterback this weekend.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
The prediction markets take on the transfer portal, plus could the Bears play in Indiana? FOS Today starts now. Hi everyone and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at FOS Studios in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access NASDAQ 100 companies in just one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. Now, coming up on today's show, we have the latest on the Michigan investigation after the firing and arrest of Sharon Moore. Plus, could the Bears play in Indiana? But first, the prediction markets have their sights set on the transfer portal. That in today's main event. And this asset class segment is sponsored by Invesco QQQ, and prediction market Kalshi notified federal regulators that it was self-certifying markets on whether college athletes in both basketball and football will enter the transfer portal, a move that drew swift condemnation from the NCAA. So for more on this, let's bring in asset class author Ben Horney and front office sports editor-in-chief Dan Roberts. Ben, let's start with you. Tell us more about this move here by Kalshi.
So Kalshi self-certified this contract earlier this week with the CFTC. And what that means is that they're informing it's a federal regulator, that they may list this as a product that people can trade on. So there is another step. They didn't actually list the market, so it's not live. People can't put money on it. But they're telling the regulator, hey, we're planning to potentially do this. And in their filing, they said that they were planning to launch it yesterday. The controversy happened. They didn't launch it. Now they're saying, hey, we aren't necessarily even planning to launch it.
And as I mentioned, Dan, obviously this drew swift condemnation from the NCAA. Charlie Baker says that they are not on board with the prediction markets when it comes to the transfer portal news. By the way, this has to be on public information. This has to be on if one of these individuals is saying publicly that they're entering the transfer portal. But what do you sort of think on the NCAA's take on here?
Well, not only do they have to say it, but specifically the language, Baker, was that the contract would resolve as soon as the player says, I'm transferring. Thus, the implication, even if they then change their mind, the bet has already paid out. Now, let's just remind viewers how this works on prediction markets. And this is their whole argument as to why they are different from sports betting sites. And the federal regulator, the CFTC, has bought this argument. They say it's different from sports betting because it's a contract. It's an events contract. So instead of it being as simple as you bet on the Eagles to win and they win and you win the bet and it pays out, it's that the market gets resolved. So the player announces, I'm transferring from USC. I'm going to transfer to Stanford. And then 2 days later, Stanford fires its coach. And as often happens when there's a coaching change, the player says, never mind, I'm decommitting to Stanford. Too bad, you've already made your money. So everyone instantly could see just how easily this could be manipulated, right? Whether it's the player himself, friends or family, or people who know of the player and who know that the player is about to announce that he's going to transfer. So many ways to manipulate this market. And I just want to add quickly, Ben and I have done a lot of reporting on the risks of the Twitter accounts out there that tweet news, often intentionally, consciously fake news, some of which have Kalshi or Polymarket badges. And all of this is a little bit tied up because in that story, because when we first saw the tweet yesterday evening saying that Kalshi was going to do this, it was from a third-party account, and you wondered, well, is this actually real? And it went totally nuclear because everyone, as you said, was retweeting it, dunking on it, saying this is such a problem. And at first you weren't sure, well, is this actually true? And then, of course, Ben was able to verify, yes, Kalshi filed. And by the way, you have to think that Kalshi was going to launch this until the big backlash. So the NCAA, Charlie Baker, came out and condemned it. His comments very similar to ones that the NFL has made about, potentially catastrophic, and we just don't trust this stuff until it can be more regulated. But I also want to add here that for now, it is Kalshi and Polymarket, and what they do is fully greenlit by the CFTC under Trump.
So let me jump in quickly because you mentioned Polymarket, and this is an important part of this story. Polymarket, I'm still trying to figure out how much of this they've done, but they actually had a live market on a transfer portal. It was PJ Haggerty. It was whether he would transfer to NC State. The market resolved November 10th. He didn't. From what I could tell, it looked like less than $3,000 was traded on it, but it just flew under the radar because no one noticed it. But when Kalshi self-certified but haven't launched this yet, it's blowing up. So this is a common theme that we're seeing. Kalshi is the one, like, the public facing, taking all the bruises, where Polymarket, which was banned from operating in the US for the last few years and is now back, is kind of quietly there doing the same thing, but not getting as much backlash.
Yeah, and Dan, one of the things Kalshi is saying is, look, we look at self-certifying certain markets that don't end up coming to fruition. This potentially could be one of them, but you'd have to think that that's probably not going to be the case here.
Well, never say never. I honestly, with our coverage and everything that has happened in this whole space, prediction markets in the year 2025, I just wouldn't rule anything out. And it's funny, as the noise around these companies gets louder and their household name recognition, which to their credit, either through marketing or amplification or new users, I really think more regular, casual, average Joe sports fans are aware of these companies than a year ago. Much, much, much more are. I think things keep coming out that people say, well, certainly they're not going to have that. And they do. I mean, prop bets on dildos being thrown onto the court in WNBA games, prop bets on whether Mohammed bin Salman will wear a black suit, whether the Coinbase CEO will say the following string of words on the earnings call. And then at the end of the earnings call, he did say all the words and laughed about it. Ha ha, I made it happen. So I wouldn't assume that just because of this backlash in the last 24 hours, you won't see transfer portal bets. They might just wait until the noise dies down. But it's all about what the CFTC will allow. And I was just on a panel recently with a New York assemblyman who said that they want to go after these companies. And he said sports betting is supposed to be state by state. But that's the whole point. They've got what amounts to a carve out because they made the argument that we're different from sports betting. And so the CFTC has said, yep, you're good in any state for now.
Ben, you're nodding your head. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, everything Dan is saying is totally true. This whole issue of them being federally regulated is so interesting. The CFTC has lost a lot of its employees over the last year or so. They have Trump's newest nominee, Mike Seelig. There was a hearing. He's not fully confirmed yet, but there was a hearing where he was grilled on this and a sports event contract specifically. And he basically said, hey, these are issues that are in front of the courts and I will defer to the courts. There's more than a dozen court cases going on, most of them involving Kalshi, some of them involving Robinhood and Crypto.com. Again, to the point I made earlier, none of them yet involving Polymarket, which I really am wondering why Polymarket is getting out of this scot-free so far.
And just want to add real quick, credit to Ben's reporting, but recently in response to some of the league officials, whether it was NFL, NCAA, Charlie Baker, who had said that there's no oversight right now of these companies. Ben had was it a Kalshi spokesperson?
Yeah.
With a real fiery response, whether you buy it or not, that basically said, how can you say there's no oversight? The CFTC has oversight, and the CFTC's oversight of us is as full and comprehensive as the SEC's oversight of the stock market. And whether you believe that or not, based on the current force and presence and size of the CFTC, is debatable.
Ben, so what happens in 2026 with these prediction markets? I mean, I feel like every week this just exacerbates and gets bigger. What happens here in 2026?
Yeah, so 2025 was the year that prediction markets exploded onto the scene. They've existed before, but they exploded. And Kalshi and Polymarket and Robinhood and all these other places, Truth Social is planning to launch one. 2026, from what I am told, is the year that some of the dust will begin to settle. And what that means is that some of the court cases will move forward. It's not clear whether there will be resolutions, but some attorneys expect this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And people also expect there to be consolidation, deal making. There's just not enough room for there to be 15 players here. Kalshi and Polymarket are the two that people most know, but there's going to have to be consolidation. Some might fail. So we're going to see some dust settle, but I also would expect it's going to be just as crazy.
Dan, let's give you the last word here.
Well, I do think it's true that not everyone can in this game, right? So there's going to be winners and losers. There's probably room for more than 2, but right now there's been we should count them up but like 10 that have announced. And there are going to be 10 different successful prediction markets. So there will definitely be tie-ups, there will be acquisitions, and some are going to have to shut down and go away when they don't fit in.
My last big prediction before we go, I'm going to take the last word from Dan. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the insider trading manipulation thing. There's going to be a big scandal next year of some kind, and it might be about the transfer portal. We'll see what it's about. The other thing I thought is someone that knows LeBron James will put a bunch of money on next season being his last year, and then LeBron retires. We'll see.
Ooh, wow. Going to be interesting to see all that. Asset class author Ben Horney and, of course, editor-in-chief Dan Roberts. Guys, thank you so much. And this segment was brought to you by Invesco QQQ, and we got more Front Office Sports today right after this quick break.
This season is about coming together, sharing moments.
We're going to go with the over tonight.
And celebrating what connects us. It's lighting the candles, gathering like a team, and finding joy in every night. 8 nights of tradition, 8 nights of celebration, 8 chances to shine. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
I see the Lions making it when it's all said and done. I talked to Brady Cannon about this. We were doing our show on Sunday night. I think the Bears are just a season early. I think they're a year early in their development. They are winning games, and they still have a negative point differential. The turnovers are keeping them afloat. That's just not sustainable when it's all said and done. Ben Johnson has done a fantastic job. Next year will be the year they truly take a lead.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
They're doing a new show about a Japanese interpreter.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're doing I don't know if it's a documentary or actors are in it.
It's got to.
I think it's a drama.
It's a real show.
It's like a scripted show?
Yeah.
About a Japanese interpreter?
Yes.
I wonder who's getting paid for that.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Super Bowl MVP, multiple Super Bowl chances there, Super Bowl championship as they got it. Nick Sirianni said on the radio, no chance that Jalen Hurts is going to be benched. But by the way, Jalen Hurts didn't play the last 3 games. I think the Eagles would be 3-0 in those games, though. Just saying, Joe.
Oh, wow. How the mighty have fallen. When the Eagles fans turn on their quarterback, it's getting ugly in Philly, folks.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and saying it's been a challenging time for the university. Michigan's interim president said the investigation into its football program, that in the wake of the firing and arrest of former head coach Sharon Moore, could lead to findings of additional misconduct that might trigger more firings at the school. So to give us the latest, let's bring in FOS college sports reporter Amanda Kristovich. So Amanda, what's the president saying so far on this?
So Michigan's university president released kind of a 3.5 minute long video yesterday giving a quote unquote update on the investigation, which honestly didn't have anything of substance in the sense that he didn't really talk about any findings, which, is to be expected. They hired a law firm to look into to investigate these allegations, and also to expand the investigation beyond just Sharon Moore, right? They want to find out, is there a culture in the athletic department? Did anybody else know? And was there other wrongdoing, et cetera, et cetera? So he kind of talked about that. And the most interesting thing to me was that he indicated in this video that the findings might lead to more firings, which we knew, but that those firings would happen, as soon as they got this credible information, which is to say that even though this is an interim university president, he might still decide to fire other administrators like the athletic director, even though he's not the permanent president.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting also because, wouldn't in theory then, if Michigan hires a new athletic director, a new president, couldn't they then hire the new athletic director, the new coach? They might have a different perspective on the law firm that they've hired to investigate all of this. I guess my question is wouldn't this be more solid if they had an actual president in place already to sort of spearhead all of this?
Oh, 100%. And look, I spoke with a high-level source last week who indicated to me that one of the reasons that they didn't want to rush to fire Ward Manuel, the athletic director, was because they don't have a permanent university president. And they thought that, gathering the information and then waiting for the new permanent president, once that person comes in, to make an assessment and make a judgment call, that felt like the best course of action, at least as of, late last week and then early this week. But obviously, if there is some sort of smoking gun, it appears, or at least has been implied in this video from last night, that Michigan will take action before bringing in the new president.
That's also really interesting, is the fact that this is the same law firm, correct me if I'm wrong, that they utilized that had gotten the tip about Sharon Moore having this relationship with a staffer. They didn't find any credible evidence of this, and they allowed him to keep coaching until that changed later. So I guess my big question is if this is the same law firm that gave them the green light a few months ago to keep going, how do we expect that this is going to change the situation here?
I think that's a great question. And I think the devil is going to be in the details, right? Because the staffer, according to, the police report files and the all of the testimony from last week, the staffer was the one who told the University of Michigan and admitted that the affair was taking place. So, that once you have that, once you have one, it wasn't even a witness, it was a subject of the investigation coming forward and admitting what was going on, then I do think that any investigation will yield more results. Now that one person has started talking, other people will talk, right? Because no one is worried about protecting either of those individuals because they themselves have admitted to what was going on.
How do you sort of feel like this will impact the coaching search? Obviously, Michigan is a huge university, has tons of money that can flow in for NIL deals and a coaching staff. But how do you sort of think that this impacts their search for a new coach? And who do they sort of maybe want to be a coach, and will they be willing to spend a ton of money on a big coach?
They will definitely be willing to spend a ton of money and to match the, gargantuan coaching contracts. Now we're looking at at least two contracts at $13 million a year, thanks to Lane Kiffin, right? And I believe Kirby Smart is the other one. So as far as money, they will do that. But there was another comment made by the university president about that head coaching search in the video last night, where he sort of said, and I'm paraphrasing, this wasn't the exact quote, but it's the tenor of it, that he wants the next coach to have the utmost, upstanding moral character. And so I think that the university is going to be under a lot of pressure to do an even more extensive, background check and investigation into the current and future candidates than, they normally would. Because, let's be honest, in college football, the morality and the ethics of a coach is not always at the top of the list in terms of what schools are considering. But in this case, I think it just has to be.
Is there also a concern that, the Sharon Moore situation, the $20 million fine, the Harbaugh era and the scandals that came from that, the reputation of the university and the program might be damaged in this after all of this.
100%. And I think that that's something that high-level university officials are trying to avoid. But I think ultimately, and we saw this with the Michigan sign stealing scandal, if you already don't like the University of Michigan's football program, this is another drop in the bucket for you. If you do like the University of Michigan's football program, I don't think that this is going to change your mind, because you can point to the fact that the university claims that they fired Sharon Moore the second they found out about it. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think it's going to change any minds that have already been made up.
One theory that's been thrown out on social media a lot is maybe Michigan hires an interim coach. Maybe they keep the current one that they have right now for at least another year and sort of assess what the college football market looks like next year for a head coach. Do you think that's a possibility here?
I mean, I think it is, but I think if they have an opportunity, they're not going to wait. So I think it's all circumstantial. I think if they end up without, a new permanent coach, let's say by the time spring football rolls around, it's going to indicate that they're in a lot of trouble. So, obviously this coaching carousel seems to have slowed down, but there are plenty of candidates that they could theoretically poach, right, who have contracts. And so I would be shocked if we get to, the end of the school year without Michigan announcing a new coach.
Great stuff as always, Amanda Kristovich, our college sports reporter. Amanda, thank you so much. Coming up next, everyone, on Front Office Sports Today, is there a chance the Chicago Bears could be playing in Indiana? We got that and all the other things in the FOS water cooler coming up right after this quick break.
For those of you who have never watched, we could easily just call it true or false, but we got creative because that's what we do. We create content here on the show. We call it buy or sell. Tucker will lead the Bucs in touchdowns this season. I never, ever would have thought that this would even be a buy or sell, but here we are.
It had to be frustrating last night that he stole the one, right? Got the goal line carry there. I don't know when he became the goal line back, but he is. That being said, this is a pretty easy buy for me. I mean, he's got 6. Rashad White has 4. You want to guess how many Bucky Irving has, Craig? How many touchdowns do you think Bucky Irving has this year? You're close. You're close. He's got 1.
Yeah, easy buy. Yeah, they're using him near the goal line, too. I did see some metrics that said that Irving has a hard time getting in the end zone, by the way. When it's close, he usually scores from outside, so it does appear that Tucker will lead the team in touchdowns this season. All right, 2 players that are going to be drafted inside the top 5 in fantasy. I probably could say, honestly, George, inside the top 3 in the first round of fantasy football next year. Jahmyr Gibbs will have a higher ADP than Bijan Robinson next season.
Gibbs, I think, is close to your number 1 next year. I do. I think we'll trust him more than McCaffrey because he stays healthy. I'm sure in PPR, when he catches so many balls, so does McCaffrey. But we love the Detroit offense here. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys, by the way. All right, I'd be happy with all of them. But I think me personally, if I had, if it was Gibbs, McCaffrey, which I think is really your 1-2 there, I'm going Gibbs.
No, and I think I think next year's number 1 fantasy draft pick, it's not that it's going to be bad. I just think there's a lot of variation going into next year. I could see any of 3 or 4 players as of right now going number 1. I would have said Jonathan Taylor, but he slowed down.
Fantasy Sports Today. Friday, starting at 3 p.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable tech, advanced analytics, AI, and more, the same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world, so let's rethink possibility. And now it's time to see what's bubbling over at the FOS water cooler. And with that, let's bring in from the control room once again our senior producer, John James, who's going to chat some of these stories with me. Hi, John.
Hey, Baker. How are you, sir?
Good to see you. Love the mustache today, man.
Thank you. We're switching it up. Grandma didn't like it last time, but we're going to see if I can win her over by just putting it, just forcing it on air here.
Yes, Grandma's going to love it when she's forced it. Meanwhile, this is interesting, Shames. In a letter to fans, Chicago Bears president and CEO Kevin Warren said that the Bears are expanding their search for where they hope to build their new stadium, and that includes outside of Cook County. That's, of course, where the team owns a 326-acre property in Arlington Heights, Illinois, that's to build a dome stadium. And this could even be moved to Northwest Indiana. So, Shames, this all could be just political posturing over property taxes and whatnot. But this would be crazy if they actually move the Bears to Indiana.
I know that seems like that's like the worst thing that they can do for JB Pritzker, who's a giant Bears fan. It feels like maybe it's a leverage play, Baker. We do know that they confirmed that they were going to be leaving Chicago proper and the area around it and move more into the suburbs. We knew that a few months ago. But to go to a different state entirely, it gets a little weird. It kind of reminds me of when the Sixers were rumored to potentially move to New Jersey, and it's like you're still being called the Philadelphia 76ers. Right. In this case, it seems like the Bears would still go by the Chicago Bears, but just might play in Indiana, who already has a NFL team.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to hold my breath that it's going to happen. I'm sure they'll come to some sort of resolution in all of this, but that would just be bananas to think if Indiana would house both the Colts and the Bears in the same state.
I know.
All right, meanwhile, just hours after their NBA Cup win, the Knicks reportedly will not hoist the championship banner. This according to ESPN's Shams Charania. They are seeking to stay focused on winning the NBA Finals in the summer instead. Now, many Shames were speculating that it has to do with Knicks owner James Dolan's frosty relationship with Adam Silver. But what do you think? I feel like this is a missed opportunity for the Knicks, given the fact that the previous two winners, the Lakers and the Bucks, both have the banner.
Yeah, who, by the way, I might add, Baker, both have won real NBA championships in the past 5 years as well. So it's not like, people were saying, oh, if the Knicks put one up, it's like this is the only thing they get to celebrate right now, et cetera, et cetera. This is a real thing to celebrate, I think. And as you said, like at the very least, the NBA wants it to be something to celebrate. So in a way, it feels like as we've been talking about, who is this cup for? How can the NBA make it feel special? For James Dolan to say, hey, we're not going to do anything. We don't see this as a big deal. It does kind of seem like, he's flipping a bird to Adam Silver there a little bit.
Also, look, if the Knicks don't win the NBA Finals, they can always change this perspective, and they can do it at the end of the year because at least they still won something. But I just think an outright, nope, not happening kind of thing, I just think is a little weird.
So funny. I also saw, I think it was Yahoo Sports that tweeted out this giant graphic yesterday that said, no banner, and it was a picture of Jalen Brunson, and someone quote tweeted it like, this meme is going to go so hard this upcoming year too when they don't win the NBA championship either. But I think it's a real, it's a reminder to celebrate the victories throughout a very long NBA season. And I think this means something, Baker.
All right, let's see what we're watching tonight, James. What's going on tonight?
Well, here's the weird thing, Baker. A ton of NBA games. Let's see if we can count them here. I think there's like 10 NBA games here tonight. None of them on national TV outside of one on NBA TV, which is the Clippers-Thunder game, which is going to be a stinker, knowing how poorly the Clippers have been playing and how great the Thunder have been playing. But it kind of makes sense because you're going up against what I think could be the best Thursday Night Football matchup and possibly the best regular season game when you think of all the stakes at play here in the NFL. You got Rams versus the Seahawks, the battle for the NFC West, and potentially the number one seed in the NFC as well. And the thing that's really interesting, Baker, is that NFC playoff picture is shaping up in a crazy way where there is a world where if whoever does not win tonight, that team could, still finish with 10, 11, 12 wins and be out from the playoff picture entirely.
Yeah, basically you have Chicago, the Packers, you have the Lions, you have the 49ers, you have all these teams basically competing for 3 spots if they don't win their division. So all the pressure on these two teams tonight to win tonight to lock up the division and possibly that number 1 spot.
2 11-win teams here already, Baker. And yeah, you said it. One of them could miss entirely. The teams that we're looking at here are the Rams, the Bears, the Niners, the Packers, and the Lions. One of those teams is going to miss the playoffs outright because either the Panthers or the Buccaneers who win the NFC South, potentially with a losing record at that, will sneak in, or I should say, will get a top 4 seed in the playoffs, because that's the system we've all bought into.
Great Thursday night game. Shames, thank you so much. And thank you at home for watching us here on Front Office Sports Today. We'll see you next time.